Chapter 309 Reunion. On a rainy midnight, someone wearing a bamboo hat and a bamboo raincoat was looking down at a small village with flickering lights from halfway up the mountain. As he was staring intently at the village, the sound of a cane tapping on the muddy ground came from behind. Then a voice was heard. "Indeed, it's just as you said. They ended up coming here." The bait was certainly effective. Although they had no choice but to escape due to unfavorable circumstances, unless they're fools, they have no reason to do anything conspicuous. That's right. Thanks to that, the wait was worth it and you won the bet. Ting. Someone behind him flicked a silver coin with his finger. The person wearing the bamboo raincoat caught it without turning his head. The silver coin was the price of the bet. Putting the silver coin he received into his bosom, the bamboo hat-wearing man said, "Are you certain about the preparations? Ho ho ho, do you not trust this old man?" "How could that be? If that were the case, there would be no reason for me to be with you, Elder So. Now let's see your skills." "Just wait and see. I can handle this quietly." The one called Elder showed strong confidence. Thud. Ha! The expelled monk Jiamzhong, who had put down a wine jar the size of a 5-year-old child, looked at Siep Chun across from him with a grin on his face. Siep Chun was also grabbing a wine jar with both hands and gulping it down, but more than half of the alcohol was soaking his chin and upper garment instead of his mouth. Then Siep Chun staggered and put down the wine jar. Thud. Damn it. Ha, you're no match for this monk. Jiamzhong, who checked the remaining alcohol in Siep Chun's wine jar, spoke with a triumphant expression. At this, Siep Chun looked at Jiamzhong with a disgusted face. He had prided himself on being a drinker, so he had purposely challenged him, but this was not just a living wine jar but a level of pouring alcohol down his throat. He wasn't even pushing out the alcohol's effects with internal energy, so how could he be so unaffected? "Are you really not feeling anything? Do you think I would get drunk just by emptying 3 wine jars of this size?" Ha ha ha. After being expelled, he had been drinking almost every day. Not wanting to see the invisible things and always wanting to be in a drunken state, he had been drinking continuously, thanks to which he had become one of the most renowned drinkers in the martial arts world of the Central Plains. Ha ha. Youngster. Now that you know you can't do it, don't try to challenge me. What are you talking about? It's still far from over. Let's do it again. I told you can't do it. I said let's do it again. Siep Chun grabbed the wine jar with determination and started gulping it down again. After a few mouthfuls went down his throat, he couldn't endure it any longer and vomit rose up, so he ran outside. Bleg. Foolish kid. Ha ha ha. Jiamzhong, who was watching him with a sneer, started drinking again. Mong Muyak looked at the two of them pathetically, shaking his head, and then took a sip of the warm rice wine. They don't even know the way of alcohol. What's the point of enjoying alcohol if you drink it like that? They were truly pathetic fellows. Tap. Putting down the cup, Mong Muyak raised the corners of his mouth, feeling much better. Since entering the Imperial Palace for the mission, he had to maintain a state of tension, so he didn't have the leisure to drink alcohol like this. Phew. However, he had a drink to relieve the fatigue of nearly 5 days of non-stop southward travel, and he felt the blood circulating throughout his body and his stomach warming up. Perhaps because of that, the alcohol tasted exceptionally sweet. Branch leader. Did you say this rice wine is Shaoxing wine? That's right. I brought it from Shaoxing in Zhejiang province while going down to Jiangnan this time. How is it? Is the taste good? It's delicious. The 6 flavors of sweetness, sourness, bitterness, spiciness, and astringency are well balanced. It is indeed the wine that King Gojian of the Yu Kingdom enjoyed. The Hunan region where the Yu Kingdom was located was a granary, so the rice wine brewing method was developed, thanks to which there were many famous rice wine, yellow wine varieties. Shaoxing wine was a specialty rice wine of Shaoxing in Zhejiang province. Among rice wine, Shaoxing wine, which was considered the best, was also famous for being distributed by King Gojian of the Yu Kingdom to his soldiers before going to punish the Wu Kingdom, using a brewing method that had been passed down since the spring and autumn period. As expected from the deputy head of the intelligence department under the society leader, your knowledge is extensive. Truly brilliant. At the branch leader's flattery, Mong Muyak smiled nonchalantly. His father, vice leader Mong Xiaoqian, had a deep understanding of alcohol and placed great importance on the way of alcohol, so he had also let his son Mong Muyak, taste various regional alcohols of the Central Plains. Therefore, Mong Muyak had also experienced many unique alcohols and had his own insights into alcohol. Pahaha. You're putting on all sorts of airs just for drinking alcohol. At that moment, Jiajiamzhong provoked Mong Muyak with a sneer. At his provocation, one of Mong Muyak's eyebrows rose. However, he soon ignored it. Playing along with those who lacked class would only tire out his noble self. The way you drink is just like pretty bodhisattvas saying, "Oh, I can't drink," and just putting their lips to it and sipping. Pohahaha. Ha. Sipping. A vein bulged on the forehead of Mong Muyak, who had been trying hard to ignore him. Jiajiamzhong made a ridiculous expression and provoked him further. Why feeling bad? But it's the truth, isn't it? A true man can't even drink properly and can't join in a drinking game. Smack. Before he could even finish his words, Mong Muyak abruptly stood up from his seat, grabbed a wine jar and started gulping it down. He drained it in one go without stopping even once. But that wasn't the end of it. Immediately after, Mong Muyak grabbed the wine jar next to him and started gulping it down as well. Up to the first jar. The youngster fell for it. Jiajiamzhong, who had been looking relaxed with this expression, soon swallowed his dry saliva and his eyes widened. I thought this fellow who was pretentious about the way of alcohol was just a clumsy noble, but it seems that's not the case. Thud. Mong Muyak, who had emptied 2 jars in one go, soon found a full wine jar. Then he shouted at the branch leader at the same time as Jiajiamzhong. Bring out all the alcohol you have. Please bring more alcohol. At the requests of the two, the branch leader was perplexed, but unable to resist their urging, he gestured to his subordinates to go to the warehouse. Rumble. Rumble. Despite this noisy situation, the holy fire priestess was sleeping with a blanket over her, even snoring in front of the warm brazier. It was only natural that she couldn't endure it, as she had not been able to sleep properly, and now that she had satisfied her hunger and was in a warm place. There was someone staring at the holy fire priestess with disapproval. It was the masked Ma Arihayan. If it weren't for the agreement with his lord, Mokjun, he would have kicked her right away to find out how his father had died. However, since he had made an agreement, he had to endure until Mok Jiongun's business was finished. Humph. Ma Arihayan snorted and then drank his tea. Mok Jiongun, who was tilting his wine cup, pointed to the full cup and said, "If you're in a bad mood, why don't you have a drink of that alcohol?" "No thank you. This is my first time drinking warm alcohol and it's quite delicious." "It's alright. If everyone drinks alcohol, their senses will naturally become dull, so someone needs to stand guard and protect the Lord with a clear mind." Ma Arihayan firmly refused. He had traveled southward for 5 days without rest, and although there had been no pursuit during that time, he still believed that they should not let their guard down. Looking at him, Mok Jiongun smiled faintly. Mok Jiongun had a favorable view of him, seeing him as inflexible but never neglecting his vigilance even after entering this place, constantly releasing his energy. Not bad. Having a drink or two would warm up your body and be good for you. Clink. Mok Jiongun clinked his cup against Ma Arihayan's full cup and downed it. At this, Ma Arihayan stretched out his hand towards the wine cup for a moment, but then politely grasped the teacup with both hands, raised it towards Mok Jiongun and said, "I will use this as a substitute." With that he drank the warm tea in one gulp. Mok Jiongun did not urge him to drink anymore. In the dark dawn about 2 hours later. Swish. Outside it was still noisy with the sound of rain. The once noisy and bustling inn was now dark and silent, with only the sound of snoring heard. A middle-aged man carefully opened the door and came out of the inn building. He was the branch leader of this place. The branch leader, who had come out of the inn, soon raised his hand, sent a signal and lightly flicked his fingers. Tap. As soon as he did that, dark figures appeared from the surrounding buildings. They were all wearing black masks. Thanks to the sound of rain, they were not hindered in their movements and boldly surrounded the inn building. The number of masked individuals surrounding the building reached several dozens. Nevertheless, even more masked individuals appeared from somewhere. Meanwhile, unlike the masked individuals, an old man with a fierce appearance, wearing a bamboo hat and leaning on a bizarre-looking cane with a snake's head, walked towards the branch leader. When he appeared, the branch leader smiled and said, "Just as you said, Elder." After about an hour passed, they really started collapsing one by one and fell asleep. Didn't I tell you? I told you they would all fall asleep after an hour. But you said there was someone who endured for nearly 2 hours. What a tenacious fellow. Come to think of it, I couldn't put much of the medicinal ingredient you gave me into the Golden Bell tea just in case, so I think that's why the masked fellow fell asleep late. But there was one fellow who drank a lot of alcohol but fell asleep the latest. He must have some tolerance. Tolerance. Yes. That medicinal ingredient is closer to a medicine than a poison. So it doesn't harm the body and naturally makes one fall asleep slowly, even for masters, so it makes them lower their guard. However, if they have ever been prescribed that medicinal ingredient even a little, they will have a tolerance and fall asleep late. I see. Anyway, you are amazing. Indeed, Elder, you have reached the highest level not only in poisons but also in all medicinal ingredients. Ho ho. Stop the flattery there. Did you make sure they were sound asleep? Yes. I even pressed the acupuncture points you mentioned and they didn't budge. Good. With those words, the old man turned his head. Then, as if waiting, the person wearing the bamboo hat and bamboo raincoat walked over from behind and said, "It was worth bringing Elder so." Swish. The person wearing the bamboo raincoat slightly raised his hand. Then some of the masked individuals stepped forward. They were skilled in concealing their presence and had extraordinary martial arts abilities. As a total of 6 people came out, the bamboo hat-wearing man ordered, "Bring out only the old woman and pierce the hearts of the rest to kill them instantly." "Yes, sir." As soon as the order was given, the 6 masked individuals cautiously approached the inn. Swish. Due to the heavy sound of rain, there was no problem concealing their presence. Thus they entered the dark building one by one where the lights were out. As they entered, the bamboo hat-wearing man crossed his arms and silently watched. Fortunately, things were resolved more easily than expected. The fellow who was said to resemble that bastard had already lost his life in the imperial palace, so they just needed to deal with the rest and take away the holy fire priestess. Meanwhile, the branch leader of the Heaven and Earth Society approached him and cautiously said, "Now that we have successfully completed this mission, can you recommend me to the 3 realms as promised?" At his question, the bamboo hat-wearing man answered in a heavy voice, "Don't be impatient. Since you played an important role, you will naturally be rewarded. I apologize." The branch leader of the Heaven and Earth Society bowed his head in apology and then stepped aside. The bamboo hat-wearing man looked at him with disapproval. Cockroach-like bastard. The fellow's martial arts were only at the 4th realm level, yet he was greedy despite being entrusted with such an easy task. As he was thinking of him as pathetic, the old man leaning on the cane with a snake's head shape opened his mouth, tilting his head. "They're late." At the old man's words, the bamboo hat-wearing man's eyes narrowed between the gaps of the bamboo hat. Indeed, they were late. Those who had eaten the medicinal ingredient made by the old man and fallen asleep would not easily wake up even if they were beaten, shaken, or even had their acupuncture points pressed. It was taking too long for killing such people. Creak. Then the closed door of the inn opened. As the door opened, a figure's face could be seen from the dark inn. Judging by the shape, it seemed to be one of the masked individuals, but at that moment the bamboo hat-wearing man frowned. He thought one of the masked individuals was coming out, but it was none other than the head of a masked individual. In the darkness, someone was grasping the masked individual's hair and sticking out their head. What the hell is this? The startled branch leader was at a loss. What on earth was going on? Clearly, everyone inside had fallen asleep, and he had personally confirmed it by pressing their acupuncture points. Yet who was the one inside holding out the severed head of a masked individual? Then a voice was heard. "I thought it was a considerate gesture to make us sleep soundly with the medicinal ingredients like liriodendron root, angelica and jujube seeds, but it seems that's not the case." At that voice, the eyes of the old man leaning on the cane with a snake's head shape widened. How did he figure it out? That was because the person had accurately identified the medicinal ingredients used, even though they had been refined with a special secret method to change the aroma and taste. Splash. At that moment, the severed head of the masked individual fell into the puddle of rainwater on the ground. Along with it, someone who appeared to be in his 20s, wearing 2 sword sheaths at his waist, walked out from the darkness. It was none other than Mok Jiongun wearing a human skin mask. Chapter 310 Reunion 3. Are they all dead? The bamboo hat-wearing man with narrowed eyes stared at the in-building shrouded in darkness. Swish. When it rains, the noise interferes with sound perception. This is because when internal energy is used to enhance hearing, even the sounds of countless raindrops become amplified. However, this isn't the only problem. Rain, which can be considered a natural phenomenon, is filled with a kind of water energy that causes the surrounding energy to disperse. As a result, discerning something through energy sensing amidst the pouring rain is difficult even for exceptional masters. Does it matter? In any case, from the moment one person woke up, the original plan was disrupted. It was as if sacrifices had already been made. At that moment, the old man leaning on the cane with a snake's head spoke in an intrigued tone. "Who is that fellow?" At that question, the branch leader of this place spoke with perplexity. "That person. It's the one who fell asleep the latest." "The latest?" "Yes." "What are you trying to say by only mentioning it like that? You should tell us his name or which sect of the Heaven and Earth Society he is from." "I don't know." They all addressed each other as Lord. Yes. Even Vice Leader Mong Xiaoqian's son called him Lord. The Vice Leader's son called him Lord? The bamboo hat-wearing man couldn't hide his puzzlement at the branch leader's words. Come to think of it, there should only be 3 people including the Holy Fire Priestess, since that look-alike bastard died, but their total number was 6. That meant there were others included who weren't part of the original plan. However, for the Vice Leader's son to be in a position to be called Lord, he had to be at least a disciple of the Heaven and Earth Society leader. The society leader wouldn't have secretly dispatched his disciple. "I don't know what his identity is." The bamboo hat-wearing man then spoke to Mok Jiangun. "Is that your real face? Or is it a human skin mask?" "Oh my. I thought you were from the Imperial Palace, but it seems that's not the case." "What? Then it's one of the two, but since the branch leader over there obviously betrayed us, it's not the Heaven and Earth Society, so is it the organization of the mark?" With those words, Mok Jiangun drew a mark in the air with his finger, a vertical line penetrating the center of the character, 2. As soon as they saw this, the eyes of the branch leader and all the masked individuals changed. This was the same for the old man leaning on the snake cane and the one wearing the bamboo hat and bamboo raincoat. Who the hell is this bastard? He knows about our existence? This wasn't simply a matter of considering it as such. Swoosh. 2 of the masked individuals surrounding Mok Jiangun moved and attempted to subdue him in an instant with a skilled joint attack, targeting the right and left side simultaneously. Swish. At that moment, Mok Jiangun lightly moved his hands separately and instead grabbed the arms of the masked individuals with the technique of capturing arm. And then, crack. He pulled the 2 arms he had grabbed and tore them off as if it were nothing. The masked individuals, whose arms were torn off in an instant, screamed and rolled on the ground filled with rainwater. Splash. Arg. My arm. You're noisy. Thud. Crack. Thud. Squish. With Mok Jiangun's kick, one masked individual's neck twisted and broke, and another masked individual's head was torn off along with the spine by Mok Jiangun's hand. The eyes of the surrounding masked individuals were filled with vigilance at the excessively cruel handling. Regardless, Mok Jiangun tossed the severed head and said, "Splash. The masked individuals are obviously small fries, and you 2 gentlemen and the branch leader are probably higher-ups in the organization, right? At least 3 realms or above." Before he could even finish his words, swoosh. The old man with the snake cane disappeared and instantly appeared in front of Mok Jiangun, swinging the head of the cane towards his head. However, clang. The cane was blocked by the blade of the evil commandment sword that Mok Jiangun had halfway drawn. As the snake head of the cane made a metallic sound instead of being cut by the exceptionally sharp blade of the evil commandment sword, Mok Jiangun spoke with interest. "It seems it's not an ordinary cane. Who the hell are you? How much do you know?" Tremble, tremble. The old man's eyes gleamed with surprise. Although the young fellow's inner strength was quite impressive, he thought it couldn't be that strong. However, as he slowly drew up his inner strength, the snake cane only trembled but didn't budge. This fellow was no ordinary person. Whoosh. What is this sword? It's only halfway drawn and clashing, but a bizarre demonic energy can be felt from it. It's definitely not an ordinary sword. It seems his safe escape from the Imperial Palace wasn't just due to luck. He's definitely not at the level of the late-stage warriors. Good. Then. Swoosh. The old man began to draw up his energy in earnest. Then a green haze rose from his snake cane. It was none other than poisonous energy. As the poisonous energy flowed out, the old man's inner strength doubled, and Mok Jaeongun's body was pushed back due to the repelling force. Splash. Fush. However, as soon as his feet touched the ground, there was no phenomenon of being pushed back or anything. At this sight, the old man's eyes narrowed. He had infused poisonous energy into the repelling force, albeit partially, but the fact that Mok Jaeongun was unaffected made him puzzled. Come to think of it, not only was he the only one who didn't fall asleep from the medicinal ingredient he had concocted, but he even figured out what was in it. This fellow has some knowledge of poisons or has built up a tolerance. It was impossible to be like this without studying poisons. Meanwhile, Mok Jaeongun spoke. Old man, it seems you've learned poison techniques? At that question, the old man laughed as if it were absurd. Ho ho ho. You are the first youngster to address me in such a manner. Yes, I have mastered poison techniques. Even before you were born. Swoosh. As soon as those words ended, a green haze rose from the old man's entire body. Even his hair had a dark green color and fluttered, and the force was so strong that the raindrops instantly turned into steam upon contact. It was a tremendous poisonous energy. At that moment, swish. The bamboo hat-wearing man raised his hand and pointed at the inn. As soon as that signal was given, the masked individuals surrounding the inn rushed towards it as if they had been waiting. Swoosh swoosh. Swish. Indeed. As if he understood the bamboo hat-wearing man's intention, the old man who was emitting poisonous energy, raised the corners of his mouth and swiftly moved towards Mok Jaeongun. It was to prevent Mok Jaeongun from stopping the masked individuals. As the snake cane, infused with green poisonous energy, skillfully created a barrier, Mok Jaeongun fully drew out the evil commandment sword to block it. Clang clang clang. Swoosh swoosh. As the snake cane, imbued with green poisonous energy, and the evil commandment sword clashed, blue sparks flew, and the raindrops scattered in all directions. The places where the scattered raindrops touched. Sizzle. They turned black due to the poisonous energy. The masked individuals who were unlucky enough to be hit by it quickly lost consciousness as the poison spread throughout their bodies. At this, the surrounding masked individuals shouted, "Everyone get back. Don't go near the elder." The masked individuals hurriedly distanced themselves from them. As they distanced themselves, the masked individuals couldn't help but be surprised inwardly. That's because, as far as they knew, although they were aware that these individuals possessed extraordinary skills to escape from the imperial palace, they thought they would be considered among the top of the late-stage warriors at most. Who the hell is that fellow? How is that youngster enduring against Elder so like that? Is he simply enduring the poison? It was to the point where they couldn't understand the confrontation at all. In the meantime, the two had already clashed their sword and snake cane over 40 times. Clang clang clang. The old man, swinging the snake cane, spoke with a voice filled with exhilaration. Not bad. I never expected to encounter someone other than that damn bastard Tang Yin-hei who could properly endure 5 out of my 8 poisons in a place like this. The old man couldn't hide his genuine admiration. He thought that even if one had studied poisons and had a tolerance, he could easily knock them down with just 5 poisons. However, despite such potent poisonous energy, Mok Jaeongun wasn't being pushed back at all. Where did this fellow come from? If it was to this extent, it seemed alright to raise it to 6 poisons. Huh. However, the old man suddenly found it strange. This fellow is impressive for enduring against him, but shouldn't he be impatient by now? Thanks to being blocked by him, Mok Jaeongun couldn't stop the masked individuals from entering the inn. Then he should be anxious and eager to get away from him somehow to go and save his companions, but there was no such sign at all. Does he prioritize his own safety over his companions? Curious about this, the old man asked bluntly. You're quite peculiar. Of course, it would be difficult to escape from me, but do you not care at all even if your companions die? Companions? That's right. Well, rather than that, shouldn't you be more concerned about your subordinates first? What? Boom. As soon as those words ended, the wall of the inn shattered and someone was sent flying out. At this, the old man swung his snake cane widely to create distance and turned his gaze towards the one who was sent flying. The old man frowned. That's because the one who was sent flying from inside was none other than a masked individual. The masked individual whose chest was caved in by a fist strike, soon lost his breath and dropped his head. You damn rats, how dare you sneak in wearing masks? The expelled monk Jiamzhong walked out from the broken wall, clashing his fists together. He wasn't the only one who came out. Siep Chun emerged from inside with his blood-soaked Guangmudo sword slung over his shoulder, and right behind him, Mong Muyak could be seen holding what appeared to be a masked individual's arm. Boom. Ugh. Moreover, the ceiling of the inn shattered, and one of the masked individuals was sent flying upwards by a series of rising kicks. The masked individual, whose waist was almost broken by the storm-like kicks reminiscent of the shadowless leg technique, soon tumbled down from the roof. Thud. Roll roll. Fush. The one who landed on the roof after taking down a masked individual was none other than the masked Ma Arihayan. At the sight of them, the eyes of the masked individuals were filled with perplexity. They thought only one fellow was awake, but it seemed they were all awake. What is going on? The old man raised one eyebrow and glared at Mok Jiangun. It was you. You were the one who did something. The old man instinctively thought that the cause was Mok Jiangun. If he had a tolerance to endure his poison and could even identify the sleeping medicinal ingredients, he should be able to prepare countermeasures against it. Mok Jiangun shrugged his shoulders and spoke with a sneer. Then did you think I would let them continue sleeping even though I knew it was a trap? You're simpler than you look. Grind. At this, the old man, whose anger surged, gritted his teeth. Swoosh. Then he spewed out a green poisonous energy incomparable to before. It was the realm of the 7 poisons among the 8 poisons he had comprehended. The 7 poisons could be considered the realm of the poison man, and it was to the extent that even the surroundings where he stood and the falling raindrops were affected. As the green haze spread in all directions, the bamboo hat-wearing man hurriedly shouted, "Elder, restrain your poisonous energy." If there were only enemies it would be fine, but there were also subordinates, the masked individuals, nearby. If he turned into a poison man and spewed out such potent poison, even the masked individuals would be poisoned and suffer damage. My God. At that moment, Mong Muyak, who had come out following Siep Chun while carrying the arm of a masked individual, couldn't hide his perplexity upon seeing the old man holding the snake-head-shaped cane. At this, Siep Chun asked in puzzlement, "Why are you acting like that? That old man is Gaiong Sao. Gaiong Sao? Gaiong Sao. Could it be? That's right. He is Gaiong Sao, the 8 poison snake staff and the head of the Gaiong family. 8 poison snake staff Gaiong Sao. If one were to name the masters of poison throughout the martial arts world, the ones who were always mentioned were the 8 poison snake staff Gaiong Sao and the 1,000 poison hand Tang In-hei, one of the 8 stars. Both of them had reached the realm of the poison man, but only Tang In-hei had his name listed among the 8 stars. So there were some who considered Gaiong Sao to be slightly inferior. However, that was the kind of inference that novices in the martial arts world would make. The reason Gaiong Sao couldn't have his name listed among the 8 stars was that he belonged to the western regions, such as Nanman or Beihai, outside the Central Plains. Having reached the realm of the poison man, considered the pinnacle of poison techniques, he could be said to be the most specialized in killing people among all the masters who wielded various weapons. At this, Mong Muyak hurriedly shouted, "Pai Lord! That old man is the 8 poison snake staff Gaiong Sao. Don't engage him in close combat." At his warning, the old man No Gaiong Sao snorted. "It's already too late. You were so confident, so let's see how much of my poison you can. Where are you looking, you bastard?" Gaiong Sao, whose fighting spirit had risen, frowned. That was because Mok Jiangun was not looking at him but at the person behind him. The one Mok Jiangun was staring at was none other than the bamboo hat-wearing man. He was staring at him very intently, which was absurd. This bastard is looking down on me. He had drawn up to the 7 poisons among the 8 poisons in an instant. Since he had turned into a poison man, each of his attacks was no different from extreme poison. Yet, in such a dangerous situation he was looking away? He must be crazy wanting to die. Smack. Gaiong Sao, who had stabbed his cane into the ground, assumed the stance of the toad's skill. He crouched down like a toad with his legs bent, which was his unique technique, the toad poison skill. He would make him pay the price for looking away. Shiver. At that moment, Gaiong Sao's eyes wavered due to the chills running down his spine. That was because Mok Jung-un was smiling so eerily that the corners of his mouth reached his ears, and he was exuding a tremendous killing intent that was unbelievable. It wasn't just him who felt this tremendous killing intent. All the masked individuals surrounding them were overwhelmed by the killing intent in an instant, flinching and taking steps back. What killing intent? This. What the hell? Clench. At some point, the bamboo hat-wearing man had moved his hand to the sword hilt hidden inside his bamboo raincoat. It was because he instinctively realized that the tremendous killing intent was directed at him. Chapter 311 Reunion 4. Killing intent. It is an energy that becomes stronger the more one's desire to kill something becomes uncontrollably intense. Emotions belong to the realm of the mind. Among the many emotions, the desire to kill possesses the most intense and volatile will. Therefore, it stimulates not only the five senses of others but also their sixth sense, making them vigilant. Just like now. Whoosh. What killing intent is this strong? My lord. This killing intent was so intense that it made not only the masked enemies but also allies like Seop Chun, Mong Muyak and Ma Arehyun shudder for a moment. The killing intent was so strong that their hair stood on end, and their true energy in the Danjian boiled up on its own due to vigilance. Who the hell is this bastard? The head of the Gyeong family, Gyeong Sao, who had assumed the stance of his unique technique, the toad poison skill, stared at Mok Jung-un with startled eyes. At first he thought he was a master who had reached the peak of the transcendent realm with a tolerance to poison. However, to intimidate the crowd and instill unease with just killing intent, one had to surpass the wall. But surpassing the wall was the same for both sides. Even he who had surpassed the wall couldn't take his eyes off the fellow's killing intent and was in a state of tension. What the hell is that fellow's identity? It definitely couldn't be considered the realm of the late-stage warriors. If it was to this extent, it could rather be the 8 stars, the top masters of the martial arts world. Swish. No way. Gyeong Sawa's eyes widened. He had not taken his eyes off the fellow at all, but at some point Mok Jung-un appeared right in front of him. At this he was momentarily startled, but since he had already finished circulating his energy, he didn't hesitate and immediately tried to launch the double palm strike of the toad poison skill. Thud. Ugh. However, in that instant Mok Jung-un's knee kicked up Gyeong Sawa's chin. Gyeong Sawa's body floated upwards after being hit on the chin. In that state, Mok Jung-un consecutively kicked his chest. Thud. Bang. Along with it, the falling raindrops spread out, creating wave-like ripples, and Gyeong Sawa's body was sent flying backward. Crash. Gyeong Sawa's flying body crashed through the wall of the branch building. At this sight, the masked individuals couldn't hide their perplexity. The 8 poison snake staff Gyeong Sawa was a master of poison techniques on par with the 1000 poison hand Tang In-hye, one of the 8 stars. A top master ranked among the best in the martial arts world was subdued in just 2 exchanges by an unknown late-stage warriors whose name was not even known. What the hell was going on? Smack. Then the bamboo hat-wearing man took off the bamboo raincoat he was wearing. At his waist, beneath the removed bamboo raincoat, was a black sword that appeared to be charred black. The bamboo hat-wearing man even took off the bamboo hat he was wearing. Then the face that was hidden was revealed, and it was a middle-aged man with a scar above his left eyebrow. Swish. His face was wet from the pouring rain, but how could one forget that face? The corners of Mok Jung-un's mouth rose. It was indeed that bastard. Before learning martial arts, he was called the sickle-slaying demon and had tracked their traces. At that time he had encountered that bastard. You should have lived quietly. Why did you go around making a fuss and hasten your fate? Sting. The left side of his chest where he had been stabbed by that bastard throbbed. Meanwhile someone shouted, "Left Guardian?" It was none other than Seop Chun. At Seop Chun's exclamation, Mong Muyak also recognized him and spoke with a perplexed expression. Why is the society leader's left guardian here? Seop Chun was the 3rd guardian commander of the headquarters. Since he was stationed at the headquarters at all times, he couldn't help but know the faces of the guardians who were close to the society leader. That person was the left guardian named Li Guang. Left guardian? What are you doing? At Seop Chun's shout, the middle-aged man with the scar, no, the one named Li Guang, drew the charred-looking black sword from his waist with an annoyed expression. Mok Jung-un, who had not taken his eyes off him, opened his mouth. You said he was the society leader's left guardian? But why is the left guardian to us? Seop Chun couldn't finish his words. Upon learning that the identity of the one who seemed to be the leader of the masked individuals was the left guardian, the thought that the mastermind who ordered their deaths could be the society leader himself came to mind. Mong Muyak seemed to have a similar suspicion as Seop Chun, and he was equally perplexed. The society leader sent him? Then since we have completed the secret mission, is he trying to discard us? Why? It was incomprehensible. He was the son of the vice leader, and wasn't Mok Jaeong-un raised as the disciple of the Shadow Clan master and even a candidate for the fourth disciple? But even if it was a mission that he didn't want others to know about, something seemed strange. Is this really the society leader's order? As he was puzzled, the middle-aged man with the scar, Li Guang, looked at Mok Jaeong-un and opened his mouth. Your killing intent is directed solely at me. Do you know me? At his question, Mok Jaeong-un twitched his lips and spoke. Of course. How could I not know? I've been eagerly waiting to meet you. You've been waiting to meet me? You bastard. The middle-aged man with the scar, Li Guang, frowned. Because of what the fellow said, he was reminded of someone, but he heard that bastard had definitely lost his life in an accident during the selection process for the embroidered uniform guards. Then it couldn't be that bastard, so who the hell is he? No. It can't be that bastard. In the first place, it couldn't be that bastard because no matter how much one's martial arts improved in such a short time, there was a limit. He had seen it firsthand when the society leader tested him. It hadn't even been a month since then. No matter how outstanding one's natural talent was, no, even if one encountered a fortuitous encounter, there was a limit to how strong one could become. Therefore he was really curious about the identity of this person, but I've always wanted to ask. Step. Mok Jaeong-un walked towards him and spoke meaningfully. Are you Ghost Blade? As soon as Mok Jaeong-un's question was asked, the surroundings stirred. Even though only the words Ghost Blade were mentioned, the reaction of the masked individuals was as astonished as when they saw the mark. Meanwhile, the middle-aged man with the scar, Li Guang, who had raised his eyebrows at Mok Jaeong-un's question, opened his mouth. Who are you? Why are you looking for Ghost Blade? Just answer whether you are or not. If you are indeed Ghost Blade, I think I can reduce a lot of the hardships I've had so far. Crack. Swoosh. Before he could even finish his words, a tremendous poisonous energy surged and everyone's gaze turned towards it. Looking in that direction, a green haze was spreading in all directions, enough to oxidize even the falling raindrops, and it was melting even the intact building. Sizzle. Through the building melting away due to the poisonous energy, a figure could be seen. It was none other than the 8 poison snake staff Gyeongso. Elder. Elder is safe. At this sight, the masked individuals cheered. However, it didn't last long. That's because the poisonous energy he was emitting was on a different level compared to before, and the green haze was spreading rapidly in all directions. As the potent poisonous energy that oxidized the rain and melted the buildings without a trace spread, the startled masked individuals had no choice but to distance themselves from him. Gasp. The poison is rushing towards us. Get back. Don't go near the elder. Swoosh swoosh. Regardless, Gyeongso paid no heed and walked towards someone exuding anger. It was none other than Mok Jaeong-un. I admit it. I let my guard down. Gyeongso had drawn up to the 8 poisons, the highest realm of poison techniques. Although he had let his guard down despite drawing up to the 7 poisons, he felt his mind going blank for a moment from the unexpected strike he received from Mok Jaeong-un. At this, Gyeongso acknowledged it clearly. This person was not a late-stage warrior but a master whom he had to face with his full power. Then he needed to go all out in a manner befitting him. Swoosh. At some point his hair had completely turned green. He could confidently say that the 8 poisons realm was nearly on par with the legendary Myriad Poisons embodiment, the Myriad Poisons pool body, which embodied 10,000 poisons. You are the first one to make me use all 8 poisons since the 1,000 poison hand Tang in Hei and that person. Swish. Gyeongso, whose form could only be seen in green due to the green poisonous energy, launched himself towards Mok Jaeong-un. It was one of the unique techniques of the Toad Poison skill, the 8 poison melting village. The trajectory of the barrier created by the green poisonous energy targeted the vital acupuncture points on Mok Jaeong-un's upper body with a tyrannical momentum. Sizzle. The force was so strong that the surroundings were melting away due to the aftereffects of the poisonous energy. This was the danger of poison techniques. No matter how strong a master was, if they directly confronted poison techniques, they could be poisoned by the aftereffects of the poison or have their body melt away by the extreme poison. However, Mok Jeongun was extending his hand towards Gyeong Seo's poison technique without dodging at all. "My lord, you need to keep your distance," Seop Chun shouted in alarm at Mok Jeongun's response. With that level of poison technique, even the repelling strong energy might not work. However, an unexpected event occurred. Swoosh swoosh. Mok Jeongun blocked Gyeong Seo's unique technique with one hand while standing still. The trajectory of the brilliant green barrier surrounded by potent poisonous energy tried to penetrate Mok Jeongun's hand and inflict damage in any way possible. But, swoosh swoosh. Mok Jeongun blocked it with one hand without moving an inch. At this, Gyeong Seo's eyes wavered. Unlike before, he was using his full power to unleash his unique technique. Not only did he draw up to the 8 Poisons realm, but he was also attacking with the power of the 10 Stars realm. So judging by the surroundings melting away due to the poisonous energy, its power was at its peak. This fellow. What? Gyeong Seo was utterly perplexed. He thought that if they continued to exchange blows, no matter how profound one's internal energy was, they would be poisoned by the poisonous energy. However, he hadn't noticed before, but every time his hand clashed with Mok Jeongun's, the latter's hand was flickering with a purple light. This can't be poison. He thought it couldn't be, but it was definitely poison. It wasn't just a level of tolerance to poison, but this fellow had properly mastered poison techniques. Moreover, the poison technique he was using was not a shoddy one, but Wave Demon Poison Scripture? For a master of poison techniques, you recognize it. What is your relationship with that old man, the Island Poison King? Flickering Poison King Baeksaha. Although he had not reached the realm of the Poison Man, the Wave Demon Poison Scripture of the Baek family could be considered a peerless poison technique that was not inferior to the Gyeong family or the Sichuan Tang family. Is this fellow Baeksaha? It was nearly impossible to possess this level of poison technique mastery unless one was Baeksaha. No, it's questionable whether he is really Baeksaha. As far as he knew, Baeksaha himself had not reached the realm of the Poison Man, but unlike himself, this fellow was so skilled in poison techniques that he could generate poisonous energy only when clashing in an instant. Swoosh swoosh. Grind. Damn it. Gyeong Seo gritted his teeth. He had already unleashed 5 techniques, yet this fellow was blocking his techniques with just one hand without moving a single step. But at that moment, someone charged towards Mok Jeongun with lightning-fast momentum. It was none other than the middle-aged man with the scar, Li Guang. The black sword wielded by Li Guang aimed at the space between Mok Jeongun's eyebrows in a surprise attack. It was an exquisite single strike that even Gyeong Seo had not anticipated. However, smack. In an instant, Mok Jeongun caught it precariously with his index and middle fingers. Clang. He caught it. Li Guang was dumbfounded. Meanwhile, Gyeong Seo, who was unleashing his unique technique towards Mok Jeongun, shouted in an angry voice. Are you trying to interfere with me? No matter how superior the opponent was, he had his pride as a martial artist. How dare he launch a sneak attack and interfere while they were still in the midst of a confrontation? However, the middle-aged man with the scar, Li Guang, drew up more inner strength into the hand holding the sword and said, Now is not the time for that. Regardless of the situation right now, look around before you speak. Around. At those words, Gyeong Seo suddenly moved his eyes and surveyed his surroundings. He had been solely focused on Mok Jeongun, so he had no room to pay attention to his surroundings. However, an unbelievable sight was unfolding before his eyes. Swish swish. Stab stab. Arg. Ugh. Around them, 2 swords dyed in black light were flying around as if they were alive, indiscriminately stabbing and penetrating the masked individuals. At this tremendous sight, Gyeong Seo couldn't hide his shock, his eyes widening. Teach, this is the demonic sword force? Chapter 312 Reunion 5. Level gain a high understanding of energy by peeking at the wall, allowing them to manipulate weapons with true energy. This is called sword control technique or energy sword control technique. Since the sword control technique does not directly grasp the sword, it gains freedom of movement and can unleash more effective sword techniques. enabling attacks over a wider range. However, there is a realm that maximizes this sword control technique, which is the energy sword force. Masters who have surpassed the wall of the wall and reached the profound realm have true energy that has reached its pinnacle and has a smooth flow, allowing them to maximize the sword control technique and even generate sword force. This is unbelievable. Gyeong Sao, the head of the Gyeong family and the 8 poison snake staff, couldn't hide his perplexity. Swish swish. Stab stab. Ugh. Arg. The 2 swords flying around like fish in the air, indiscriminately attacking the masked individuals, were engulfed in a black light. It was unknown why they were dark, but that intensity was undoubtedly sword force. Gyeong Sao stared at Mok Jae-eun with trembling eyes. How can this be? Only the sword sheaths remained at the fellow's waist. He didn't even realize that while confronting him, Mok Jae-eun was operating the energy sword force to attack his subordinates. Swoosh swoosh. A monster. How can such a monstrous fellow? While using the energy sword force like this, he was not only confronting him but also the second realm Li Guang, who had launched a surprise attack with just one hand without moving a single step. It was as if this fellow alone was simultaneously doing 4 things, and it was no exaggeration to say that he had reached mastery, not just having surpassed the wall of the wall. At this swoosh, Gyeong Sao stopped his attack and created a distance of about 6 steps. Then, Gyeong Sao shouted at Mok Jae-eun. Reveal your identity. Are you perhaps one of the 6 heavens? 6 heavens. They were the transcendent masters of the true grandmaster level who were considered the pinnacle of the current martial arts world. Having surpassed the wall of the wall and reached the profound realm, it was known that no one could confront them one-on-one unless they were the 8 stars right below them or another member of the 6 heavens. Gyeong Sao was convinced that Mok Jae-eun was one of the 6 heavens wearing a human skin mask. He thought that without being one of them, it was impossible to display such miraculous martial prowess. 6 heavens. Mok Jae-eun chuckled. Is a top master who has surpassed the wall mistaking him for the current pinnacle of the martial arts world? He seemed to understand the meaning of those words. It meant that the martial prowess he had attained had reached a level that could instill vigilance and fear in others. At that moment, clench. The middle-aged man with the scar, Li Guang, drew up his inner strength and tried to pull out the black sword blade caught between Mok Jae-eun's index and middle fingers. However, tremble. The sword blade only trembled more but didn't budge at all. What kind of inner strength does this fellow have? Realizing that he couldn't pull out the sword, Li Guang released the sword he was holding and directly generated sword force with his sword finger skill. Swish. The sword force he generated tried to pierce through Mok Jae-eun's face, but thud. Ugh. Before he could do so, Mok Jae-eun's kick struck Li Guang's abdomen, and his body was pushed back nearly 10 steps. Swoosh. Li Guang quickly dissipated the true energy penetrating his internal organs through his feet. Sizzle. As Mok Jae-eun's true energy, that is, the energy of death, flowed out through the soles of his feet and came into contact with the rainwater, it oxidized and turned into steam. Li Guang's expression twisted. It was only for a brief moment, but it was a bizarre true energy that dispersed his original true energy. He thought he should avoid direct clashes as much as possible. Meanwhile, Gyeong Sao said to him, Li Guang, stop for a moment. That person is definitely a true grandmaster of the 6 heavens. 6 heavens. Li Guang frowned. Indeed, if one could simultaneously confront them for a moment while wielding the energy sword force, it was impossible unless they were a true grandmaster level master who had been given the title of the 6 heavens. At this, Li Guang also clasped his hands together in a salute towards Mok Jae-eun and said, Are you really a senior of the 6 heavens? If he was truly one of the 6 heavens, even if they fought with the determination to perish together, their chances of victory were slim. Therefore their attitude couldn't help but become cautious. And if he was really one of the 6 heavens, the organization would also want to recruit him, so it was better to persuade him rather than fight. Stab stab. Ugh. Dodge. Dodge it. However, the 2 energy sword forces did not stop and continued to kill the masked individuals. Even Mok Jae-eun's subordinates Sip Chun Mong Muyak, the masked Ma Are Hyen, and the expelled monk Jajiam Jong, were guarding the inn where the holy fire priestess was and killing the masked individuals, so their numbers were rapidly decreasing. At this, the middle-aged man with the scar, Li Guang, hurriedly shouted, Senior, please stop for a moment. We will also stop attacking. So, why me? We're saying let's talk for a moment. At his words, Mok Jae-un chuckled. Then, swish. With a light gesture of his sword finger skill, the black sword that had fallen to the ground rose and flew towards Li Guang's heart. Oh no! Li Guang hurriedly used his footwork to dodge the sword and caught the flying sword hilt. Smack. Plunge. Ha! Swoosh. The true energy infused in the sword control technique was so strong that even though he caught the sword hilt, he was dragged nearly 5 steps by the sword. Li Guang, who had barely grabbed the sword, calmly said to Mok Jae-un, "We understand that you are angry because of what we did. However, this is a misunderstanding. If you hear our proposal, first tell me whether you are Ghost Blade or not." At Mok Jae-un's question, Li Guang's expression darkened. The individual before him had been speculating since earlier that he was Ghost Blade, but was it because of the rumor that had spread throughout the martial arts world? How much does he know about the organization? Their organization had existed for a long time, but it was thoroughly organized into cells, and when there were people who knew of their existence, they had responded in 2 ways. One was to recruit them into their organization and the other was to silence them through murder. The dead cannot speak after all. Stab stab. Li Guang. Gyeong Sao shouted at him. It was because if they didn't hurry, all the masked individuals would end up dead. At this, Li Guang hurriedly said, "I don't know what you know, Senior, but I am not Ghost Blade." "A Ghost Blade? You're not." "That's right. If there is some misunderstanding, please stop for a moment. During the time I explain the meaningless slaughter." Swish. At that moment, Mok Jae-un moved his sword finger skill. Then one of the 2 swords that were indiscriminately attacking the masked individuals while unleashing the energy sword force flew over. It was none other than the Evil Commandment Sword. As the flying Evil Commandment Sword approached, Li Guang hurriedly raised his black sword infused with sword force to block it. Clang clang clang. In an instant the swords clashed about 5 times. Li Guang's expression as he blocked the sword became strange. The sword was obscured by a ferocious black energy, making it difficult to see clearly, but this sword seemed familiar. "I feel like I've seen this sword somewhere." Meanwhile, clang. As Li Guang deflected the sword that was confronting him was sucked into Mok Jae-un's hand. Click. As the sword was sucked in, the black light of the sword force disappeared. With the disappearance of the sword force, the sword blade was clearly revealed. Seeing this, Li Guang's eyes narrowed. That's because the moment he saw the unique pattern engraved on the sword blade, he realized the identity of that sword. Evil Commandment. It was definitely one of the demonic knight swords, the Evil Commandment Sword. He couldn't fail to recognize it as he had seen it in the training hall of the Heaven and Earth Society's headquarters. The owner of that sword was definitely... He should be dead. Something is strange. He heard that the owner of that sword had lost his life during the selection process for the embroidered uniform guards. This was information that had come through the organization's intelligence network in the Imperial Palace, so there couldn't be any errors. Moreover, that bastard was estimated to be at the pinnacle stage of the transcendent realm. No matter how outstanding one's natural talent was, there was a limit to the development of martial prowess. At this, Li Guang reached a different conclusion. Could it be? Is this person the Northern Sect Blade King? The Six Heavens Northern Sect Blade King Gu Songbek. Come to think of it, he had obtained one piece of incomprehensible information. In the process of abducting the Holy Fire Priestess from the underground prison in the Imperial Palace, the situation had escalated, and even the Northern Sect Blade King Gu Songbek had intervened. However, apart from them escaping in an unexpected way, it was said that the Northern Sect Blade King Gu Songbek suddenly stopped blocking them and returned to the Emperor. Upon hearing this, Li Guang had found it puzzling. For a true Grandmaster-level master like the Northern Sect Blade King Gu Songbek, no matter how outstanding they were, there shouldn't have been much difficulty in capturing the late-stage warriors of the Heaven and Earth Society. But why did he suddenly give up and return? The answer to that seemed to have come out now. The Northern Sect Blade King Gu Songbek is a Southern Pacification Commissioner of the Embroidered Uniform Guards. If a cadet died during the selection process for the Embroidered Uniform Guards, there is a high probability that he obtained that demonic sword through the reporting channel. Then is this a trap set by the embroidered uniform guards of the Imperial Palace? Even if they had planted members of the organization, the capabilities of the Imperial Palace should not be taken lightly. It was said that 2 executives at the second realm level had lost their lives, and they were investigating who was responsible for it, but was it all the work of the embroidered uniform guards? Clench. Li Guang tightly grasped the sword hilt, stared at Mok Jiangun, and spoke in a confident voice. Are you Senior Northern Sect Blade King Gu Songbek? Why do you think so? The owner of that sword died in the medicine hall due to an unfortunate incident during the selection process for the embroidered uniform guards. Oh. I thought I had killed them all, but it seems there were remaining organization members in the Imperial Palace. At Mok Jiangun's words, Li Guang let out a light sigh. It seemed his prediction was correct. When he heard that executives at the second realm level had suddenly lost their lives, he thought it was strange because there were only a few in the Imperial Palace who could kill them. It was indeed the embroidered uniform guards. At his words, Mok Jiangun chuckled. What's with that reaction? It was a reaction closer to a sneer. His reasoning shouldn't be wrong, so why was he showing such a reaction? As he was puzzled, Mok Jiangun said to him, It's disappointing. Even your side doesn't know everything. Step. With those words, Mok Jiangun walked towards him. At this, Li Guang shouted, 32 strategies. Tap. As soon as that shout ended, the surrounding masked individuals suddenly stabbed their own bodies. Then their energy began to surge rapidly. Li Guang exchanged glances with Guiyang Sao. We have to go. The 32 strategies was a method where organization members below the third realm would overload their original true energy and launch a joint attack to perish together. If that person was the Northern Sect Blade King, he was not someone they could persuade, so they had to buy time like this and escape. But it was at that very moment. Boom. Mok Jiangun stomped his foot strongly on the ground. At that moment the ground shook and the raindrops scattered in all directions, creating wave-like ripples that spread over Tenzhong. Then the masked individuals who were overloading their original true energy trembled and collapsed. Splash. Fush. What? What is this? They couldn't hide their perplexity at the sudden strange phenomenon. They had planned to sacrifice them and escape, but what the hell was going on? Swish. At that moment, Mok Jiangun's figure suddenly disappeared. It seemed like he was moving at an extremely high speed, but it was so fast that they lost track of his footsteps for a moment. Li Guang heightened his energy sensation and rapidly moved his eyes. It was at that very moment. Swish. A blurry shadow appeared in front of him and aimed at his forehead. He tried to block it by tilting his head back, but... Swish. It was a feint. The real attack was... Bang. Ugh. A palm strike that flew towards his abdomen. Li Guang's body was sent flying backward, rolling several times on the muddy ground filled with rainwater. Ugh. Li Guang, who had rolled for a while before stopping, hurriedly tried to regain his posture and get up. However, blah. He couldn't hold back the urge to vomit due to the energy that had penetrated his internal organs and was scattering. Li Guang, who had vomited everything inside, staggered and finally managed to lift his head, searching for Mok Jiangun's footsteps. But right in front of him, Mok Jiangun was standing with his hands behind his back. Seeing his arrogant stance looking down on him, Li Guang gritted his teeth and spoke. Ha. Northern Sect blah. I recognized you at a glance, but you couldn't recognize me at all. At that moment, Li Guang's eyes wavered. Regardless, Mok Jiangun continued speaking. I even repaid the debt from back then with the same 3 stars inner strength. As soon as those words ended, Mok Jiangun grabbed his chin and took off the human skin mask he was wearing. Rip. As the human skin mask was removed, revealing his real face, Li Guang's slightly wavering eyes widened as if they would pop out. To him, Mok Jiangun smiled eerily and said, It's been a long time, hasn't it?